motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, November 2023 financials. You that?
Yes, I'll take that. So everybody in the room has the packet in front, and Joe, if you could toggle down to this one. Yes. So I'm going to talk off of the key highlights page here. So for 5 months ended November 30th, on the revenue side, favorable to budget by $1.5 million on a budget of basically $31 million. Basically, the favorable performance is due to federal funds revenue, $1.347 million, due to use of the ARPA funding for the operator trainees' wages, as well as favorable directly generated funds of $239,000, which is primarily the favorable interest income versus budget due to the higher treasury rates and investment balance. That's offset slightly by unfavorable local funds, which is $77,483. And as you recall, is that the budgetary assumption for a portion of the TRIP zero fare grant match, about $1.696 million for the year, or about $141,000 per month, or through 5 months of $706,000 was to be funded from the GRTC fund balance. So therefore, there's no revenue coming in. So obviously, the favorable performance on the directly generated funds as well as the federal funds kind of minimize that impact. On the operating expense side of the house, we're favorable $2.4 million. That's basically lower than budgeted labor expenses, about $86,000, which is due to the vacancies in the admin side. That's offset by the unfavorable labor expense in the operating and maintenance. Put in perspective on it, vehicle operations, the labor is unfavorable, about $620,000, and that's due to the amount of trainees. We currently, the budget that was adopted had 300 full-time operators and 26 part-time, for a total FTEs of 313. As of November 30th, we had 306 full-time operators, 27 part-time operators, and we had 34 trainees. So cumulatively, from July through the end of
115 FTEs plus
$4 million in operator training wages, as well as the taxes associated. And that's what we use the ARPA funds to offset.
Awesome.
Or y'all can back off a little bit on advertising.
We have.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I see the word.
After all that push that we had all that time, you did great, fantastic.
The advertising budget was like 1 million, I think. We're only giving them like $1 million or $500,000 every 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that $1 million is just turned into salary money on the budget line, I'm guessing. Dialed back on the advertising.
We did. Oh, we
Right,
absolutely
yeah.
did.
Should we cut it off or just still, or should we cut it down or like not reduce it? I think we should reduce it.
Yes. So we will
Always need more.
continue to hire because of
Attrition.
Yeah.
But no, not nearly what we'll have one class a month, maybe.
That's great.
Or
That's awesome.
other than that.
I mean, right now you have 34 trainees and we're already 6 over full time.
Correct.
It's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, I'm not upset. I'm not upset at all. I just think that we need to start dialing that dial back down a little bit.
We started in October, reducing the cutting.
And we're still at 34 trainees on top. That's it's either telling you that the economy is starting to change
Both.
or that we've done better. And I do think that both of those are.
Pay rate's great.
Yeah.
The work environment is great. The culture's great. And then the market's back.
And also, you're seeing the overtime rate for both operators and maintenance coming down.
Because you got enough people to do the job.
There's a lot of positive things involved. It's more of an art.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
You know, because you're trying to predict who's going to graduate, how many people are going to respond. So we're in a good position now. In addition to the labor aspect, you know, maintenance, the vehicle facility, vehicle maintenance facility, they're on budgeted headcount of 70 folks at the end of November, and then going through going through the general administrative is about $772,000 favorable, of which $470,000 is in salaries and wages due to vacancies, and the remaining $302,000. On the services line item, you'll see that services are fair by $1.5 million on a budget of $3.15 million, and this is primarily in the professional and technical services. It's about $1.42 million is on the planning consulting line. It's $961,000. It's due to the timing of the large studies that we budgeted that are grant funded. The North-South BRT environmental clearance and conceptual design, the Western BRT extension, as well as micro transit demo grant. And on the advertising promotion side, we're fair about $390,000 apart as we dial back some of the advertising, but also some of that is related to the 1A extension as well as advertising for the micro transit. So some of those are, the majority of that favorable variance is timing, and as we get more traction on those projects, we'll see the spend. On contract maintenance services is about $84,000 favorable, and that's just split between the timing of BRT maintenance and some building maintenance. Materials and services consumed favorable about $830,000, and this is timing of purchases relative to budget calendarization. Fuel and lubricants are favorable about $349,000, which is probably we're a little bullish on what the rate for gasoline, diesel, and the lubricants would be, also versus to some of the timing of some of the deliveries. This is through November. You haven't had the big push for the winter months, which might drive it up a little bit. And other materials and supplies, which is primarily vehicle parts. So it's a good sign that newer buses, newer fleet, less repairs required. Utilities is slightly unfavorable at about $78,000, and this was due to unusually high water consumption volumes, which were under investigation and discussion with the city of Richmond. We ended up having the water meter and the floor box replaced, and the resolution in December 2023 with regards to the water, and we'll see that unfavorable variance turn positive as we have a $240,000 credit coming on the water side of the house. We still have ongoing discussions regarding the DPUC gas bills. There's some issues on meter reads as well as the accuracy of the bills, which we're currently in discussion with DPUC. Casualty and liabilities costs favorable about $217,000. This is generated by the experience on the uninsured motorist provisions, the providing as well as claims against it, as well as the Virginia liability pool for general liability was more favorable than was anticipated in the budget. Offsetting that is purchase transportation is unfavorable, about $161,000 on a budget of about $3.2 million. And
Can you let Tyrone know where we're at so he's...
Thank you, sir. Where are we?
We're I was talking off of the key highlights page, and just reading it. If we needed to, if someone wants to see it, I do have this sitting back there.
Fifth page in on this.
One more. Okay, it's just going through the main chapter, so I'm going down now on the second page of that, flip it one more to purchase services.
Thank you.
It's unfair about $161,000, and this is due to higher than budgeted demand for care and care plus transportation services. So pretty much, there's a good portion. Our story is kind of similar as it's been through July, August, September, and October. Is that with the activities of hiring operators, we've gotten to a good point where now we have the operators. We are kind of working through the large favorable variances on the consultancies, or just timing on that, and otherwise, there's nothing that's concern to us, from a negative variance standpoint. To calm down a couple more, we can go to the so all in all, I'm sorry, just finishes off on the key highlights. So at the end of November, we have a surplus of around $2.1 million. revenues are exceeding the expenses. And we, that's pretty much been generated. If you just, the offset is just more or less the timing of the expenses versus the revenues. If you go to,
And how much of the fund balance do we have to pull in? We were able to cut that down to only, didn't we say we were putting in? We didn't have to.
so yeah, at one point, about 1.7 million was coming out of our
Reserved, right. And but we didn't have to pull it out because we had.
Correct. We have enough cash as well as we have enough revenue sources of covering. The key there is the cash aspect.
So do we take anything in? Okay, all right, I thought you had said there was a gap, then we took a little bit out of reserves, so you take anything out of.
1.7.
So what we had is we have the TRIP grant program from DRPT, which has a match of $3 So what we did was we apportioned $1.5 million of that $3 is included in the City of Richmond's operating contribution, and the balance of it was to be part later, but we designated it from the GRTC fund balance to get going in the year. We're obviously pursuing other business partners to get on board to suck that up. So when I was commenting on the revenues, the local revenues to let's see there. On this chart here, I'll show it to you. Here. That's the income statement up there. You'll see that the local revenues are up there, slightly by $77,000. So on a budget of 16 million. So the budgetary assumption, you have all the operating contributions that come in, but there was the assumption that the $1.7 million of the zero grant match would be funded from the GRTC. So that's about $141,000 a month. So cumulative through 5 months, that's $700,000. So we have a $77,000 unfavorable to budget. So we basically absorbed 90% of that unfavorable through other, the use of local portion of grant expenses. So it becomes a non-issue at this point.
Where's the with CVT?
You can go to top all the way down to the last slide.
9.
Yeah.
Right here.
This one for that one. So this is the CBTA quarter activity for the December 31st. So the total balance is 41.5 million. So we're going to fund the the third and fourth quarters out of that, which is $11.7 million. So the remaining $29.151 million is available for our fiscal 2025 and beyond funding based upon the approved regional public transportation plans for those fiscal years. Right now, just to put it in perspective, the fiscal 2024 operating budget was $22.9 million of funding from CDK with an additional $250,000 in support studies and about $500,000 in capital support. So
22.
So we have, it's safe to say that we, as of December, we probably have our 2025 funding for CBTA operating capital and studies already in hand invested. Off of this sheet here, as well as that, as you can see in the top on the receipts, the monthly receipts are averaging just around $2.8 million. And these funds, there's two investment vehicles. Obviously, there's the LGIP extended maturity that we're investing. We have about 23.2 million in there, and the balance of 18.3 million is in the Wells Fargo account. But attached to that is an Albright Treasury sweep. The Treasury sweeps are about 520 basis points, and the LGIP EM is roughly about 430 basis points. So during the quarter, CBTA funds are about $407,000 in interest and another $185,000 in unrealized gains. So they're conservative investments, but obviously we're taking advantage of the high interest rates right now that the Fed has.
Generally, we're not spending as much.
This is being held for future expansion that's outlined in the Regional Public Transportation Plan.
Don't we try to hold it for a year and then we know what our budget is and then we spend that, we know what that next year's budget is. So if we bank everything we get now basically for a year and then we use that to properly budget for the next year, which I think is a good, prudent way to do it.
Same thought, the question, I think tell me if I'm wrong, the question is, we're probably spending the same, if not more now, but our revenues have increased, and I think our budgeting of 22 million for CVTA, we're gonna collect 32 million CVTA. So we're putting money in surplus for when we have full operation to expand routes is what.
I think we should be looking at that and also some of the projects like the shelters and stuff that we need. I think we need to do a little bit of both.
I think at 30 million so far actual, our spending is even or up. Our expenses are even or up.
I mean, you're averaging 2.8 million.
Yeah, a month.
Times 12, we're approaching $34 to $35 million.
Yep.
Plus-
A year.
Plus the interest.
Jeez.
A year. And then
Budget 22.
About $9 million aside for expansion out in later years.
Yeah,
We walked in where the goal, I think I'm going to state it wrong. I wrote it down, 300 full-time, 26 part-time.
306?
300 full-time, 26 part-time.
Yeah, 300.
which is
We
313.
are at 306 full-time
Yeah.
plus 6, 27 part-time plus 1, and 34 in class.
Which is fantastic.
Full expenditure for staffing. So
So then how long will it take for us for routes to catch up to, staffing?
In this winter. It should hit it, yeah.
because we have the equipment.
So 23, 24 winter, or 25, 20, 24, 25 winter.
So we're expanding in the 14th to go
Right.
to Chesterfield. So that'll be a huge expansion. And then in May, we're expanding Broken Parham and Henrico. So all of that will be a significant amount of operators. And then another expansion happening in September. At that point, we actually need more operators than we can look into the budget, but we need more than we budgeted last year.
Which will increase our part-time percentage a little bit. And it's why we have a reserve. And the equipment, if I recall, we're good on equipment.
We are.
Buses, vans, not so much because of the microtransit.
Yeah, that was the other part, those microtrains, it's gonna change the,
Until we can get funding to purchase vans specifically.
it's gonna change things a lot.
Yes. Well, they've included 2 additional mechanics in the new budget. But other than that, yes.
I don't know if I came in late, but if he mentioned that in the current amount of operators, that includes the microtransit. So right now we have 4, but we're additionally going to put on about 10 more operators. So that is part of that count. So even though it was 3,
Go to 306 actual. This is
Okay,
as of
so cut
November,
off
so it's
13.
306, 27 part-time, and then we have 34 folks.
Yeah, but a year ago, we couldn't even have had this conversation.
Yeah, who'd have thought we'd be here?
We would have thought that we were still thinking a year ago that now we would be maybe getting to where we could start having a conversation that we're already having.
5 months into the budget, we have a $2 million actual to budgeted surplus, plus CVTA is kicking at high speed.
So to your point, I do think we need to bank some for the future so that we can continue to keep the fares conversation where we want it to be. But we also need to be investing a little bit more, which would be interesting because that's probably in here, right?
I'm not on the CBTA, but I'm curious what the governor's proposed budget revenue changes could impact CBTA funding, if any at all. And I was just curious to know,
It didn't, as best I could tell, he didn't affect CVTA funding at all.
just making sure.
Nothing he did touched what happens with
Will
CVTA.
it drop today? That's not from the governor. That will cut the gas tax by 2/3, but we don't think it's gonna survive.
Because I'm curious because
Oh, it
that is
got
at
dropped
stake.
Okay,
today?
it's 8.
So I just got on CVTA. Literally, my first meeting was yesterday. It was finance. So that was just them turning the water hose on my face. I mean, it's like so much, you know, but I'm sure we'll hear more at the general meeting in a couple of weeks.
Just thinking through the future of CDTA funding, as it has been great for us to grow, I think, this aspect, which is great for the setup of how revenue is spent, is that going to have a shelf life dependability for supporting our future budget needs as we grow and expand services? Because if not, that falls on us to see what that gap could be as we continue to.
CVTA clearly is not operating like there's going to be some reduction. They just got a Moody evaluation, you know,
We're looking at
thinking about the possibility of bond. It has a AA1 rating. It's about as high as it can get. So for an organization that's 4 years old, it's kind of crazy. Man, first of all, I don't even know how the heck were we even doing transportation before CBTA? I mean, it's the amount of money that is coming into the localities here.
Why do you think we were getting our clocks cleaned by Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads area? Because they've been doing this forever and we're just coming to the table. And I can tell you this though, that I heard people yesterday from Crater PDC talking about whether or not they need to start working on some kind of transportation authority for that. And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm not sure that you're going to see a huge expansion of that. But
Exactly why it's critical to keep having these wins, the expansion of Brook Road, the expansion of Chesterfield, operators being fully staffed, the work culture, the environment, the operator turnover being reduced. All those things are reasons that if CVTA were to be messed with, that's where this organization can go forward and be like, we're serving a greater community, a jurisdictional community because of the success and the wins of this organization.
So the micro, and I'm sorry, the micro transit takes us into what? Where are we with micro transit? Like what localities?
The area.
Yeah.
So there's two zones in Henrico, one east end Sandston, and then the one we opened in Azalea, Palatine, Ashland, and then Whole Street in Chester. And then the city, we're gonna apply for two in the city, one in Broad Rock area and one near the airport.
I would like to put myself out there again. Is there a way for me to do that experience of going to where it's deployed or available and trying the micro transit aspect? I did the bus riding thing. It was kind of fun. And I was able to do a bike video for how to put your bike in the front of the bus. And that went a lot of, people shared that a lot. And so curious how I could maybe look at how micro transit has a use, accessibility, last mile access that we currently don't have that can show how we are meeting the needs of our population.
Yeah, the Azalea zone actually crosses over into Hanover and the city. So you go to like Ginter Park Library, like that's the beginning of it. And then you go to Florida Hospital.
I'll talk with you all afterwards.
So I think the question, I just want to share this is, so the CDTA funding comes to the big pot, and the big pot of money that comes through VDOT. The taxes are collected in the local jurisdictions, then they go to VDOT, and then VDOT distributes it. So there's a lag of a couple months, but basically it's funded from a 70 basis point big of the sales tax on everything in the CDTA municipalities, as well as there's a gasoline tax of 7.6 cents per gallon for gasoline and 7.7 cents per gallon for diesel for everything that's pumped in the CDTA jurisdiction. So when that equates to just, as we were showing, it's around, we're averaging 15% of that monthly distribution is around $2.8 million. Is what GRTC.
So it's sales and gas.
It's sales and
it's
gas.
both.
I know when they were talking earlier on CVTA with discussions about converting from fossil fuels to electric or higher, when they're talking about bonding from using a revenue bond program, more or less on the sales tax as a pledge as opposed to the others.
Right.
So,
In regarding the operators in the microtransit, we're going to work with the try and establish a separate division, microtransit division. Purpose for that is the fact that the operators wouldn't need the CDL to operate those vehicles. So it'd be easier, faster to train them, as well as the pay shouldn't be as high as the CDL So it's a little bit of a
The union's gonna be okay with that? That gonna be, is that a different entity or is it still the same entity, right? So it's part of the union
It's part
contract.
of the union. Currently, there's language that we've reserved in the contract when we used to have the small transit division. Not all of it's applicable to this, so that's why we're gonna go back into negotiations to try to get the to fit. But I've had conversations with them and they're open to it. Yes.
Okay.
So on this slide here, this is the cash flow. So this is kind of, I think, we're kind of touching upon, as you see here, the bottom line, the green bar, this is just our operating account. So on the balance sheet, you'll see a higher, so that's got the operating capital combined, or operating. So you'll see at the end of December, we had 1.352 million. At the end of September, we had 2.12. You see, we have that sawtooth function. Our cushion is less now because of the funding, where we're assuming that we're funding the local match out of our reserve, burning our cash to pay for this. So you'll see this. We're getting a little bit closer than what we used to, but we're fine. Right now, we're projecting at the end of January to be almost $8 million in the operating cash, because we moved over, as you can see, that we've moved over CBTA quarterly funding. We received our outstanding contributions in December, and we've already started to get our third quarter contributions in from municipalities already in January. So there was a little delay in one of them that caused a little cash a little closer than we want it to be, but we don't need to go into the contingency. We're self-funded, but it's as you can see, we started the year with about $8 million, and in July with about $10 million. So we have this kind of like sawtooth pattern throughout the quarter.
The reason for looks like you put the CVTA money in quarterly at the first month of the quarter.
Beginning.
And the reason it's 5.7 is because 22 million in your budget divided by the 12 months is 5.7 a quarter.
Correct.
Got it.
And honestly, if we get to from a liquidity standpoint, we could pull advances as opposed to dipping into that. But we do also, this is, like I just said, this is just the main operating account. We also have surplus funds in LGIP, which I don't really want to break any investments for operating. So we just kind of manage this, keep an eye on this, try to maximize investment. So, I mean, that's kind of the where we are through November. Have any other questions? Otherwise, we can move on to the next one.
We're on the split letter for,
Can't wait to hear this one.
yeah.
I just.
They just got a new director, right?
Yes, and I have been working with Darius, and I also reached out to the city manager. We had a meeting and got his approval. So conversation I had last week was Darius had signed it as the general manager, and then the city manager signed it. And I would have it by last Friday.
Wish I'd have known that last night. I was with the city manager last night.
Unfortunately, I haven't received it, but I reached out again today, and Darius said that the city manager did sign it, so they both signed it. I just
Okay.
haven't had it this time.
What split?
Well, it's gonna split against the
Well,
whole.
yeah,
So,
there's an MOU.
So we didn't get a formula. We got
Yes.
we did get a formula. So it's not 92.8. It's 92.8 this time, but there's a predictable formula that we've all agreed to.
yeah,
Yes.
so.
That's the most important thing.
A 10-year MOU with them.
Okay.
That locks in the formula that we agreed to, but what we did is we actually holding them harmless to the greatest amount they've received in the last 5 years. So right now it ends up being, depending on one grant ends up coming in a little like 92, like a little bit less than 92.8, 93.77 or whatever. And the other one comes at 92.8, but it has, if the revenue drops below a certain amount, below the FY21 amount, they will always stay at 92.8. So never below 92.8, but it should normalize as money increases, that they will end up eventually being, they'll get to the amount, but it'll end up being the proper split, whether it's 95.5 or whatnot. And they agreed to that.
Well, is the new director a different person to work with? Is that what changed there?
He's a different person to work with. He understands because he's been there, he was their operations manager, so far it's been a great relationship, and I think it will continue.
That's fantastic. Nothing, I mean,
That's part of the partnership.
Exactly.
That's great.
work.
Good update.
I gotta say finally, after 2 years.
Medical insurance.
All right. So as our medical benefit year is from March 1st through February 28th. So we're going to bring to the board meeting on January 16th the renewal proposal for Cigna. So the history on this, about 2 years ago, we introduced the consumer-driven wellness plan in addition to the way people open access plan. So we, at that time, we competed it amongst various carriers, and Cigna had the best package proposal. So when for the first year, we had a rate structure, and then they capped it at 13% for year 2, which was the current plan year that we were in now. And then we had started the discussions. Just put it in perspective, we have a rather high profile of claims relative to premium. So in the industry, they like 85% claims to premium and lower. We're north of 85. We have about 10 to 12 claims that are above the 120,000. So this started out at 20%, but they were willing to go to 12, and we gave them if you got a 7.5, we'll consider somebody else, and we got 7.5. So.
Well, okay, so we're having another good report.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean,
But it could have been. By not having to switch, we're the folks, all the people that are covered here, they have the access to the same network that they were in before. What we are also seeing is that, flipping through here, so the first thing is on page 2, you can see the rate increase for the different categories. And then down in the little bottom tab, on our OAP, we have the employees contribute 15% of the monthly contract premium. That goes through the payroll deductions to a Section 125 plan. On the OAP, on the consumer-driven wellness plan, we use if we don't have a chart at the table. The employee-only coverage, we do not charge health insurance because we want the employees to transition to consumer-driven. Those monthly contracts are about 70% of what the OAP contracts are. And we match it with a HSA product is $2,400 for the employee only, and then all the employee plus coverages are $3,900. So it's a good plan based upon the maximum out of pockets for being individual $3,200 and $6,000 for the deductibles, and max out of pocket $4,000 and $8,000. The savings that they have in their salary deductions plus the HSA, there is not a scenario in which the employee would be harmed by going in there. And we've seen, I think we're up to 85 contracts in the consumer-driven plan. First year out, we started with less than 35 or something.
Less than that.
Yeah. So it fits well. It's a good discussion point with the new operators coming in. They have their pay, and then they have pension, which they got to throw in 12% union dues. So having access to medical, which doesn't cost them anything, is a good selling as well as a good retention tool. So we're looking very obviously. Is recommended that the board authorize us to execute this renewal, and then the process is we'll start open enrollment in the month of February, and then we'll be up and running from March 1st. That's, we just wanted to brief the folks here in finance so that if there's any questions, that the field them and be ready for the board meeting on Tuesday.
agenda going out?
I was hoping today, it depends on the project one, I'm not sure Jim's has that. Hopefully today, we did revamp the agenda. I'll share with you. And
Sure.
Basically, we're having a staff review. We're still gonna include the packet, just not having just staff. We'll have an overall day to cover everything, any highlights that we need to highlight, unless you all disagree.
I got something I need to add, that's all that's.
Oh, okay. Janice can.
Can I get a motion from somebody to recommend this finance committee?
Second.
So move.
Favor?
Aye.
Oh, you made the motion.
Made the motion, he seconded it.
Heard.
At the same time. Cool. My only question was after that report, with the types of claims being made, is there a difference between operators versus staff? Is there a type of what kind of claims are being done based upon the amount? Just curious what the breakdown is just by employee type, if that's a factor that we can look at for health, wellness, activity things that we're doing in City Hall and that you're probably doing in counties.
Most of, I'd say the majority of our operators are on the old, if they have coverage, are on the traditional OAP. Yes, there is, this is how we like to go down the direction for the consumer driven, is to almost incentivize carrots so that if you have a base HSA, but then if you end your wellness checkup, you get all your, age appropriate preventive screenings, whether it's mammogram, colonoscopy, whatever it is, then there's additional money funded into you. By nature of the positions, the operators are sedentary. So, we want to basically, we see that, if you look at our pool claims, there's renal, there's, heart issues and so forth like that, which are, we like them to get diagnosed early, get on kind of a preventative plan, whether it be through pharmaceuticals or exercise or holistic approaches. So yes.
Curious, because City Hall is propping up a employee-based health clinic that's available quick access. I was curious if there's a way that we can see, because downtown, if there's a way to collaborate and that access, just
Chesterfield's
Lincoln-
employees have the same
Yeah.
thing. You probably have one too, right? Health clinic for your employees.
just thinking because of.
They don't have to pay a copay if they go to ours. If they're employee, they can go get seen.
I know that our staff, Lincoln is very proud of that and it's a great big thing. So just curious if that's something we can explore as a helpful aspect to work together.
Thinking, what do you think? Schrader Road piece?
Yeah.
Schrader, yeah,
That's what
that's
it
it,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, I can go there.
Yeah, definitely interested in that. And we do have a health and wellness committee that other things to do to try and encourage. Some of those are serious situations.
I know.
Included in the annual renewal of Cigna is $15,000. So we traditionally have in probably the third week of October a flu shot clinic here. But we're also looking at other avenues for funding that as well.
All right.
We talk about zero fare already.
Fair, fair, yeah.
I thought we jumped the gun.
Yeah, the 25 budget, I didn't see that on.
We can talk that.
Fair, fair and the budget. Probably goes hand in hand, so.
So in the handout here, what we wanted to, kind of share with you, folks of the finance committee here is kind of like the main driving assumptions that we're putting through into the operating budget. We're working towards, obviously, once again, having an adoption by the May board meeting. So right on page 2, on the collective bargaining unit, obviously, we have a current contract through September 30th, 2026. So the annual rate increases are paid. So the first quarter will be at the, first year's funding, it's $31.80, and it's going up to $32.91 October 1st of 2020. So it's about a 3.5% increase. But if you look at the blended rate, so quarter of $31.80 times plus 3/4 of 32.91 yields a blended rate of 32.63 versus 29.93, which was in our 2024. That was based upon the MOU. So basically, the rates increasing from fiscal 24 is about the rate to 25 proposed by about 9%. So we talked, we were touching earlier on staffing and so forth. The topic came on microtransit. So for fiscal 2025, projected staffing levels for the collective bargaining positions in transportation, we're looking to have 325 fixed route operators versus there were 300 in fiscal 24. We're looking for 30 microtransit operators, of which there were none that were budgeted in fiscal 24. We had budgeted 26 part-time operators in 24, but with the staffing, we're going to fund 22. I would say 13% of the total mix of 355. So if you take 325 and 30, that would be up to, we have the capability of up to 46 part-timers. But at this point with the plan, we would fund 22, yielding a FTEs of 366 FTEs versus 313. When you apply the wages, that's about 25.3 million in gross wages versus 24 versus 21.3. So about $4 million increase, or about 18%. Half is rate, half is volume, basically. On the page 3, on the collective bargaining side for maintenance, we're looking for increasing 2 collective bargaining unit positions. They're mechanics. Basically, we're going to put in two mechanic trainees. So with the change in the bargaining rates, gross wage is about 4.07 million versus 3.63 million, so about a $437,000 increase, or about 12% increase. For the non-collective bargaining unit headcount, increase of 9 authorized positions. Transportation, those are supervisors, 2 of them. Facility maintenance, obviously there's some bus cleaners and some other support staff. Finance, 1 position. Planning, 1 position. Scheduling, 2 positions. So the gross wage is about $10.18 million for non-CBU headcount versus 8.84 million. That's about a 1.3 million increase, or 13%. But that is kind of a full year effect. We didn't budget a full year for some of these positions in 24, so you're going to get the full year of that, as well as the layering in of the new 9 positions. We're still going to, we're vetting through these as we go, but that's kind of the first start phase of it. Moving over to page 4, obviously the insurance and safety, we're still going to reflect the participation in Virginia Transit liability for as well as in underlying this budget is continued investment in the GRTC workforce with market adjustments in wages and salaries, staff, an emphasis on staff training and development programs, as well as with the police staff, HR department, and the national free advertising to attract and retain talent. Moving over to slide 5, this is the assumptions that we're building in, as Adrian had talked about, service expansion and so forth. Our fiscal 2024 budget was built on about 6.64 million miles, and for fiscal 25, looking to schedule 7.84 million miles, an increase of about a little over 1 million miles, or about 16%. That's why you see some of the operator headcount increasing to accommodate that. From a revenue hours projection, 610,000 hours versus 542. And then obviously the next slide, which we just went through, key item here is the medical expenses. They're going up about $500,000 with the 7.5%. Sliding over to slide 7. Zero fare continues through June 30th of 2025. We are contemplating the DRPT Zero Fare Grant. This is year 3, so we're going to step down to $1 million from DRPT. Assuming that we're going to renew our VCU matching contribution, at least at the same rate that is currently contract. And
Anybody talking to them right now?
That's what I was about to ask.
I had a conversation with them yesterday.
And does it look favorable? Because I know there was a little bit of concern for a little while.
There still is that concern that they're the only partner. So I assured them, and Adrian will talk about our TAC program that we're trying to get additional partners. But we're going to have another conversation in March so that we.
If they are
So
So,
that we'll be sure, to know what they're gonna contribute, before we finalize our budget in May. Yes.
Are there other partners that would make them feel better about this? I'm just curious what that,
They just want someone else coming to the table.
they want to be first? Okay, that's, because
I asked that question, I said, do you have any suggestions, or do you think we should reach out to? No one.
I mean, we could do, I mean, I don't want to speak for Lincoln, but I'm curious what we could do. We're already a partner. Like, is there an employee thing we could, I don't, there's
It's not, it's not jurisdictions, it has to be other community partners.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense
I know.
because you're just gonna increase your,
we already have.
I mean, that's not the point. The point is to try to spread it over a bigger revenue base.
I think other
Right.
universities, other colleges.
Business.
U of R has a little bit, right?
Lincoln's shaking his head, looks like he's agreeing. He says, you said add on whatever for the city, right?
Bring it. Like, I mean, VUU, they don't really have a big campus. They're already kind of on a route as it is currently. It's not like they need more. And so J. Sergeant Reynolds, I don't know what level they would need. They're already kind of.
Point
they already
is
have
on
buses there.
the, that's
Yeah.
where that line ends.
I'm just trying to think about ways to make that easier for them because
And that actually, everything you said actually is what VCU is thinking, that they're already on the lines as well, but yet they're contributing. Why can't others contribute who are also?
They're not wrong.
we're not wrong.
I know.
I get it.
That's why we had some concern, but it looks like for this budget cycle, they're gonna stay on board. They just start looking for us to expand the revenue base.
Quite frankly, we have to show that, or they're gonna be on board forever.
Yeah, at some point, without zero, if we don't
Yeah, yes.
bring fares back, they're gonna be like,
I
so,
think that's a piece of it. I think it's CoStar, I think it's Meadows, I think it's all the folks, Dominion, like it's folks that their employees can literally use this for free.
I'm curious about like VCU basketball games. Not that we need to support them extra, but having extra buses or a service during their games or before and after would be helpful. Just thinking through, is there any way to make some type of
More valuable.
viable?
As they build, it's the hospital really is what it is. It's the employees that work at the hospital campus that I see, because I'm down there every morning at like 6 in the morning. I see it's the hospital traffic. It's,
So this gets me to a thing that's not related to this topic. I'll talk about this offline afterwards, but there's something I think the city can elevate as a need for providing an extra potential new service line in the next 5-10 years that could help address some of that in the future too. But we'll get there. It's economic development.
The hospital.
The next line item in the middle is the GRTC operating contribution. We're slated in about $20.77 million for 5. Now, this is based upon.
I'm sorry, real quick, on the zero fare, can we, early in this year, make that known that that's the
Yes.
intention so that we don't have 500 emails from the people that going to tell us that it will really help them if we stay zero fare? Like, can we preempt that with making an announcement early?
We want to take it to the February board meeting. So we wanted to kind of start the discussion right now, come up with some alternatives for kind of the local match piece, and then we could workshop them to bring back to you guys in February and then take the recommendation to February.
I just want to make sure that we don't delay that too long because we'll have somebody reading for 30 minutes on public comment.
yeah, I agree that from a financial standpoint, we can see that we're good. But I think this group has a chance to be a little strategic with how we do it and help our salespeople out because they are out there trying to sell the zero fare dollars to these folks and it's already free. Very tough sell. You know, so I think, my opinion would be this organization, when we make any kind of announcement, certainly up to the chair to bring this to the board if it feels fit, but I think we need to say, we have made a decision. However, please understand that the corporate community needs to step forward a little bit and support this zero fare for workers downtown.
For us to be able to continue it.
We enjoy having our workers utilize free transportation to get to work, but we need to put a little pressure on the corporate community to say, if you want these decisions to continue this way, you need to call somebody here and step up.
So every chamber intercity visit we've gone to has a transit focus as part of the whole thing. And I think the management roundtable with the chamber would be a great place to start.
I'm just saying, don't give up the lever. Don't just put the announcement out there and say we're zero fare. Just say, we're thrilled to do it. However, we're continuing to be creative and look for ways to do it. We need the corporate community to be a partner.
I think that's a
Is that
fantastic.
you're reading from the script?
Exactly. Started the conversation.
I think that's a good, very good point, Dan.
No, perfect.
We got a chance to use it. Let's use it.
I also think as a region coming to that management roundtable around this topic would be well received, like incredibly well received. I think regional cooperation around All-Line Trail, Pulse, and Fare Free
That's a great point.
is actually what they want to
Are we
see.
getting this in GRPs? Is Jennifer Wakefield, or can we get this to GRP? That's where those people are, right?
At the chamber, I mean, they're the same groups for the most part.
I figure this could be a topic of also the intercity and local meeting that's in February. So I'll give a brief overview. So marketing has done a wonderful job of basically summarizing what the program is and really focusing on everything you said as far as it really is for the community. I mean, for several reasons, not just for the riders, but I mean, it provides access to jobs, it builds the economy, really expands reach and provides freedom. I won't read through the bullet points, but a big plus also is that it is tax. So through RideFinders being our 501c3 and their main mission is to get people to missions, donations would be made through RideFinders. So huge win for corporations to be able to donate.
That's huge.
So if you guys can help us, you mentioned champion this. We started rolling it out at the very end of December. Just a few businesses, but are going to ramp that up. Of course, need assistance with that. But like you said, it's a hard sell if it's already free, and they know that there's funds that could come to support.
Yeah, there has to be the threat of the free may not be free forever.
And that's where we at.
Well, I mean, we don't know that we can stay free forever. I mean, we're making decisions to try to be able to do that, but corporate partnership would be significant in being able to continue those efforts.
It's a message.
Do you want me to go ahead and segue into zero fare? With that, I think I gave the original sheet, right? Did I not? I did. Okay. So the second sheet, which is like I said, introduced the zero fare conversation early to make it FY25 this year. So just background, the original amount that we received in FY19 was $8 million. We know that we are having a savings of about 1.2, so the total kind of ask here for subsidy need is 6.8. We've addressed that. BCU came in the first year with 1.3. They reduced that second year with 1.2, and we're hoping that we stay stable with that for 1.2. So GRTC, as John mentioned, the first year was 4.5, 2.5, and they're coming in with 1 billion last year. So two things that we're looking at to make it sustainable. I just mentioned the transit access partnership. Second thing today is CBTA bonds, so kind of starting that path so that it will be kind of a sustainable solution for us, not just for zero fare, but other. We have 36 million at this point, potentially over the next 5 years. That may be the case. We could grow that, and then just basically at this point, just having conversations about surviving this year. In my analysis, after some conversations of looking at the match and local match need and looking at alternatives, I realized that we applied for 56, 31, and 12. Did not apply for 80, 60, and 30, which is what we've been saying we applied for. And I think the reason for that was the constraints in the first year with the funding, knowing that was the first year of the program. So I've gone back to DRPT. It's supposed to be a one-time grant award, and have asked if we could at least apply for the Delta. So far, it has. I think they said that we could apply. So hopefully that will lead to a positive outcome for that. And that looks like if it was for, it's not a small amount. It's 5.6 million, and hopefully could be given as a lump sum if that is an option. Have begun to have some conversations, just so the jurisdictions are aware as our partners, of just the need of the last year of the grant funding. So another option would just be, in the last year, additional contributions from the jurisdictions, whether that is coupled with some level of CBTA as well at the table, coming to you guys with kind of alternatives on that. We discussed it at the board retreat that even maybe expansion would require some level of match from the jurisdictions at some point in time, maybe a 30% match or 15 or 50, whatever it might be, to utilize CBTA funds to make them go beyond the amount. Remember from the board retreat, it was around 28 or 29, at fiscal year 28, 29, that we kind of leveled out with the CBTA funds, even with the reserve. So just keeping that kind of in the back of our mind.
The 28 was what I had in my head.
Yeah. We looked at some of it because some of the funds for this year we do have, so it should push up maybe a year, but I mean, that's a year.
That's what we're doing. We're making every decision that we can to be able to push it out, but with some more revenue share, we can make that a better reality.
So the ultimate hope is that we can get community partners, but we wanted to have the conversations now that jurisdictional partners, if they could also help have the conversations with community partners, but also any level of support to come in just this last year. And the last chart I have at the bottom just shows the FY25 projections broken down by what the ridership would be by jurisdiction and the miles. And that's just kind of a methodology based of whatever the match would be. Let's say if the jurisdictions came in at 30%, that could be how the 30% is broken down. With the city coming in at 63, Henrico coming in at 30, Chesterfield coming in at close to 6. And ultimately, do we want to consider zero fare going third year?
So, oh, I'm good. Good.
The ask is 1.6.
So I'm curious, as a question, not that it affects this decision, but thinking about what does a 2030 look like for fare free to continue moving forward? Because I know we're expanding routes, we're expanding service, we're trying to grow. And in that poses new questions around the funding aspect to Dan's question around how do we get the downtown or corporate partnerships involved? I know there's things about things like Lego, like how are they going to get transit and access to those places that we're attracting for economic development. And it's important to consider as we look at this as a region, because we're getting to the point where this is not seen as a city thing anymore, as much as it is now ours, which is what we needed for a long time. As we look at maintaining this, what does that burden look like moving forward for fare free if we want to look beyond what we can currently kind of muster with our current budget, 27, 28, as a potential idea if we can squeeze the numbers to make it work. But beyond that, what does it look like? Because online you'll see stuff coming on, you'll see future expanded impacts that are going to address the bottom line of costs. So what does that need to include for revenue coverage to make that gap work? So if we want to maintain this as we go pitch it, to ask for, hey, it's not today, it's going to be as we grow, what do you need to see from us to make this work for you, to get you invested in this plan, I think is what they need to hear from us. I don't know what that needs to include, data, examples, whatever, but to know that, hey, in 28, we might be short $3-5 million if we want to continue fare free. This is what it means. Well, how can we make sure that you're a part of this success moving forward? Just a thought. Because I know we're looking at this current budgets today, and I don't know how we think about creatively partnering with our investment as a region and localities to match with the private sector to take it where it needs to be.
Starting point is the same percentage of growth, the same percentage of mileage increase would be the same percentage of dollars that we would need from corporate. So like if we're looking at, if I read this right, corporate dollars of $2 million would lower the local match, right, as we come into that spot. So to your point, if in 6 years we were 15% larger, it's 2.4.
Right.
It's going to grow in budget just like any other item.
Also, with my limiting parking requirements downtown, I need to. You're welcome. No, I'm kidding. I got a little smirk from Lincoln. That's all I need.
Or possibly
revenue bond program.
For, what do you want to fund with them?
Not just zero fee, but other big projects.
'Cause I don't think you're gonna be able to fund operating the bonds. You're gonna have to fund capital,
Yeah.
like the possibly shelters and
Yeah.
such. I mean, I don't think we're looking at another transfer station, are we?
Permanent one.
Facility.
I mean, I meant besides the downtown.
Yeah, as we grow, it would be nice to have one more on the north side, kind of like in, especially with the micro transit going further Ashland, have some sort of facility up there. Still looking at something in the western Henrico area. And at some point, I mean, if we continue to grow in Chesterfield, there's something in the south, you guys don't know about there.
Yeah,
Those are the types of things I think that we could probably be looking at, but there's gonna be a lot of road projects that I think that, are in a lot of jurisdictions that are gonna take up
Yeah.
what that bond capacity is. I don't know how much is gonna, but if we had, I mean, I can't say that it would be impossible, but I do know that there's gonna be a lot of road projects that need to be bonded.
To this point, curious about limitations because you are a company and not an authority. What would be able to provide some flexibility, like leasing and different flexible financing options? Because we're not structured that way, that this could freely open up.
Sailboats?
I don't know the specifics of that, but I mean, from the standpoint of thinking you, a revenue bond program, you have to get dedicated revenue coming in from CBTA, our 15%. Basically sales tax as well as gasoline tax. Kind of the whole premise of what CBTA was looking was to lever the collections, put it into an. So if we have, you know, we're a municipal stock corporation, Chesterfield owned. I don't know if that precludes us from issuing debt.
My advice would be, I don't think it's a horrible conversation to have. I think it's a very legitimate.
Might be able to use this CVTA's 15% to actually issue our own bonds
Yeah.
ourselves.
Based upon that revenue.
Dependent upon, yeah.
I would say this, I don't think having the conversation is a really bad idea. My recommendation would be to lean on the jurisdictions and have Henrico provide a financial person. And in City of Richmond, just put a little committee together of folks who can speak that language and see what comes out of it. They'll know those answers and they'll have attorneys at their beck and call to answer those questions. And then I think then you'll be able to gather the data to bring back to here to say, okay, we've met with financial experts in your jurisdictions. Here are some options that we think are both legal and plausible. And
To your point,
here and say, what do you guys want to do with that? What do you want to do with that data, that knowledge, that information? But I don't think that's a bad conversation to have.
the conversation we started off with where we have been budgeting CVTA and what we see coming in from CVTA and how we want to bank that and use that. I mean, honestly, a portion of that could be designated that we haven't figured out exactly what we're doing with yet, could be designated to repay bonds if we had,
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jim, but I just wanted to jump in because I think there's another layer of this that could be really interesting to explore, which is, as we've been meeting with Build Back Better Bureau, around the federal funds that are available for development that has a transit component to it. I don't know, Cheryl, if your team has talked, or Joe, I see you're nodding, so I know you're familiar, but it creates a line into some very inexpensive financing for development, but it requires a public entity to issue the bonds or to essentially carry the debt. I know GRTC isn't looking to get into the development space, but there could be a really great partnership with GRTC developers and getting what GRTC needs from a transit-oriented development space out of some collaborations. I mean, the limitation, as we've looked at it from the city side, is city debt capacity, because even if we're getting a good rate, it's just going to go up against our other debt priorities. But you know, if other public entities that have bonding authority and capacity, and it could end up being a very interesting collaboration. You could imagine around a transfer center or BRT North South. There, we could really kick the tires on this.
Even more to my point, get some smart folks in a room and start asking them those questions. And to Lincoln's point, if the finance experts in the jurisdictions, they'll know exactly the information he's talking about, and they can help put those pieces together.
To have kind of legal counsel, but because I know from the standpoint of, you know, from the pension, the IRS views us as a government entity from the standpoint of the plan. But which is unique about GRTC is that it has stock.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if the structure is kind of a gray area between the two. So, you know, non-arrested benefits, so they recognize us as a government, but does our corporate structure allow us to be considered?
Rather see you guys get all those answers now, make decisions on it when the time's appropriate, than when the time is in need, then have to go back and get that data.
I think these are why this change in the board structure is so important. With CBTA and now this kind of conversation, we've been waiting for this kind of ability to happen, and now we have leads to support it. And we haven't had before. And I think that dedicated, we know, as part of this plan, how to support these needs, because it's amazing. So, I'm here to help, whatever way we can. Legal is definitely the lawyers. They usually kill all good ideas, but in this case.
So it's also contemplating in the middle after the right below the DRPT zero fair grant. It's the DRPT operating contribution. The way this program works is we're expecting to be at the ceiling of 30%, so it goes 2 years removed, so 30% of your fiscal 2020 year operating expense. We yield about 20.77 million. Our 2024 adopted budget has around 17.5 million, which is just roughly 30% of our fiscal operating expense. So we're going to start out. We'll know the beautiful part about this. We'll know the exact number by April, so we'll include the finalized grant number in the May package. For CBTA, currently right now the model has approximately 24.52 million in operating contribution, with 250,000 for studies, about 950,000 for local share match funding. So obviously that number there is way below 34 to 36 million dollars. And as well as we were talking before, we basically have the $25 million already in the investments. So
Smart though.
just quickly over on the next page, you know, the operating contributions. I know that the city of Richmond and Henrico, we have provided some guesstimates in December as to what it was. We used the assumption of 3% CPIU. We're doing the February, flipping on the next one, we're using the February 23 to February 24 indexation. So we'll know the February 24 CPIU that will be released on March 12, March 13, March 12 and 24. Currently, I mean, just had the release today. You know, I think 3% for budgeting purposes for the cities and the counties is probably a good indication. If you're a believer of CAGRs, you know, the CAGR from February to December is about 0.19 positive. If you extrapolate that for January and February, it's around 2.36. So 3% for budgeting planning purposes is probably not ultra conservative. And then the next two tabs are the calculations that we supplied with Richmond and Henrico for planning purposes. So those are kind of the, you know, looking for it. It's basically yields about an increase in operating. So those are kind of the key assumptions that we're baking into the drafts, and then we'll refine them from now until we go to final budget adoption in May.
That's CPI from 21 to 22. Jesus.
So then the last page of this, obviously we're factoring in also, in addition to the Partners for Zero Fare, sponsorship revenue of around $600,000. That's naming sponsorships, sponsor partner programs. And then we'll also utilize the 5306 flex split letters. Around $10 million for qualifying preventative maintenance expenses, and the ADA is capped at 10% of the award for 207. So we'll factor those in there as other operating revenue support, and we will be bringing forward, now that we have the audits of fiscal 23 done and fiscal 22 was done last year, we'll bring the formal resolution to the board to take the surpluses from fiscal 23 and 22 and officially put them into the GRT operating reserve, so we can get an update.
And a deposit goal of 25% of projected operating,
Yes.
which is about,
80 million, so 25 million. I think it was, we're at 60 million.
yeah,
So
80 million,
16
20,
million dollars.
16 to 20 million.
Question?
Our update.
Anybody else have anything?
Thank you all. I'm just gonna flash cheers with us.
Thanks.